Good morning, and it's Tom Padula from TomPadulaTV on YouTube and Insegna Booksellers, and welcome to whoever comes now or will approach my work through various means, like going down my Facebook page or going to insegna.com or to YouTube and the blogspot. So this is today's program 49, and it's Thursday, the 22nd of September, 2022. It's an interesting reflection, the fact that by next week we'll reach 50 programs, which is great, half a century. Now, World History by Tom Padula live on Facebook really does cover quite a lot of ground, and it's important, in fact, to reflect on each one of the podcasts, because that's the clue for following a particular trail for your own studies of history. History is a means of understanding today and a way to plan for the future as well. It's the fact that it's a world history, not a national history, does make us reflect on the great variety of histories available throughout the world for each nation and together as well. And, today there are some very big issues in the world in terms of war and peace, and we don't want wars because we don't need them. And anyone who contemplates going to wars or doing nuclear or whatever, are just the wrong thing to do. And it's better to actually work together and go and conquer the universe. If we must do something, well, let's do it together. But let's not forget that good and evil sort of coexist. So I suppose war is a way of that evil coming across and biting all of us from time to time. Let's hope that we can avoid it. And as I said, history will help us understand how these rulers of today are behaving and where are they at in terms of the historical timeline. Some of them are really, really behind in their thinking. They think that arrogance wins the day. You might win the battle, but you lose the war. But then there are a lot of victims along the way, so those people there really should, well, they do get their rewards in the end. Yes, karma gets to them as well, for good and bad. But whether it's good or bad, when there are victims involved, the person that suffers, it's an individual experience of negative, even in the most positive of circumstances, or positive in the most negative of circumstances. Those two, the dualism of this is constant in our lives. As long as we understand it, it's okay. It's okay. We accept whatever comes our way. Now, today, just before I came on here, I was looking at two people, Benja Patterson and Henry Lawson. So, Benja Patterson is quite a character. He was a very successful Australian in every single which way, because not only did he enjoyed writing and he enjoyed life as a whole. He was many things. He was a journalist, an author, solicitor, an editor of newspapers, a war correspondent, you name it. He liked horses, he likes boating, and he likes swimming. He's the quintessential Australian, Benja Patterson, and he left quite a legacy. And he also helped Henry Lawson get some money for him through working contracts for his writings, because Henry Lawson had a different type of a different type of character, and he saw the bush. He described the bush in a very negative way, but it was also showed a lot of humour as well in some of the stories. And what I've understood from it, that as far as he was concerned, the bush didn't forgive anyone at all. It provided great solitude, and it made you mad, and in the end it gave you death. You couldn't win against the bush, so you might as well develop a good friendship with your mates and create some light-hearted humour along the way. But in the end, you were done for, and that's a good Australian expression. So that's it. I'm going to cover today quite a number of topics as usual, and let's start with where we left off last week in terms of the Middle Ages. Here we are, villains, their rights and duties. So here we are talking about the feudal system, okay, and we talked about the aristocrats and their domains, their castles, but the villains, in other words, the lower end of the population, which is the majority of the people usually in all societies, it's they had certain duties but also certain rights. So let's have a look at them. Most of these villages were serfs or villains, as they were called in England. They lived in filthy wooden huts with trodden earth for floors, but the village church was usually a beautiful, if small, stone building. Something for God, it's always up there. A villain was not exactly a slave, but neither was he a free man. He could not leave the manor on which he was born. If he tried to do so, he might be caught and branded by order of his lord with a red-hot iron. So in other words, he said, you can't escape, you cannot leave your borders, where you live. He had to work, usually for 3 days a week, on his lord's land. So if you remember, there was patches of land that belonged to the Lord, and patches that belonged to the public, and patches that belonged to the church. And he had to do additional unpaid work for the Lord at harvest time and on certain other days of the year. He also had to pay a tithe, that's a tenth of whatever he made, or tenth of all that he produced for himself, to the village priest. And we still have that, with our GST. In some places it's gone up to 20%, but in Australia we still have 10%. 10% is always a good number. A lot of the crime bosses, they want 10%. A lot of the churches want 10%. A lot of other people want 10% of what we earn. But when you add them all up, work it out. On the other hand, the villain had the right to cultivate some land for himself and to own some sheep and cattle, which he might graze on the common or village pasture land. And though he could not leave the manor, neither could he be sold by his lord. He couldn't be sold, as could a slave in Roman times. So he could not leave his land, and he could not be sold by his lord. So he was a citizen of the manor, belonging to the feudal lord. That's how feudalism came about. Specific divisions amongst certain classes of people. Freemen. A few of the villages might be freemen or yeomen who paid a fixed rent for an enclosed plot of land of their own. They could, of course, leave the manor if they chose. But unlike the villains, the freemen were bound to fight for their lord when he called upon to do so. So these freemen were like traders. They could leave their land, but if there was a war somewhere, he had to offer his services to the Lord to protect the Lord's or the manors, lands, counties, dukedoms, etc. The three-field system. In the sketch plan, you will see three large fields. I showed you last week, three large, if you put a circle all around it, you get one section goes to the village, one section to the church, and one section to the Lord. It's pretty easy to understand. Now, whether they were in exactly the same proportion, I don't know, but I don't think so. In the sketch plan, you will see three fields on which crops were grown in rotation. That is, in a certain year, the north field would be sown with wheat, the south field with barley, and the west field would be left to lie fallow. In other words, nothing, just for the animals. In the following year, the south field would be planted with wheat, the west field with barley, or perhaps peas, while the north field would be left as fallow land, and so on. As the fields were unfenced, farm animals could graze on the fallow field each year, their manure helping the soil to recover some of its fertility. And that was the idea. Individually owned strips. As the plan shows, each field was divided into scores or hundreds of strips separated from each other by borders of uncultivated land called balks. Each village owned a number of strips in each field, but these strips were usually scattered widely over the field so that each man should have his fair share of good and poor land. The Lord's strips too were sometimes scattered about each field, though we might suspect that he often had more than his fair share of good soil, of course. He had the soldiers with him. Nobody could challenge him. Most things necessary for life produced on each manor. Now, can you see why there were few shops or large towns in the Middle Ages? Of course, they could produce everything themselves and, so it was subsistence living. The villagers ate bread made from their own wheat and drank beer brewed from their own barley. On feast days, or more often, if they were rich or lucky, they might have a meal of bacon or other meat from their own domestic animals. They shared their own sheep, and even Villain's wife had a spindle and distaff on which she produced the thread to make rough, homespun clothes for her family. So they all had to do some work. So that's the villains. The villains, if there was peace, they had a pretty good life, really. And if the Lord of the Manor was nice to them, they would also help in times of sicknesses. In some of the films, you show that the lady of the castle would help those families that needed them. So there was, contact between the manor and the villagers, but they were very distinct, in a very distinct way, and it sort of worked. It worked because each section of the population had particular jobs to do, whether to plough the land and harvest, or whether to maintain, safety for the whole county through wars with neighbouring states. So that's it. That's the way the feudal system, it's sort of worked pretty well, honestly. In fact, we still adopt some of their methods today. Now, if we have that, then we go to China. China's always in the topic these days. We might as well learn all about China. And at the moment, I'm watching the Qin Empire on Netflix. I thought I'd look at the Qin Empire. But it was, as I said, 300 to 400 years before the birth of Christ. That's sort of from the warring states, they made one big state. It takes a while to get there. It takes, decades to go from one system to another. But then it happens overnight when there are wars and one section wins, the other one suffers. So let me have a look here. there's a little section here which I want to read. Liu Bei, Guan Yu, and Zhang Fei swore to be brothers, and with a small military bloc, they attached themselves to Liu Biao, the governor of Jingsu. To expand his influence, Liu Bei began his quest for talents. Liu Bei had heard about Zhuge Liang, knowing he was an outstanding talent, so together with his sworn brother Guan Yu and Zhang Fei, Liu Bei visited the thatched cottage in Longzong where Zhuge Liang was living in obscurity. Zhuge Liang refused to meet Liu Bei the first 2 times he called, but on the 3rd occasion he was touched by Liu Bei's sincerity and agreed to meet him. Finally, Liu Bei found a talented advisor. So that was this Zhuge Liang. So let's have a look at Zhuge Liang. Who was he? Zhuge Liang, 181 to 234. So he was born in after the birth of Christ, 181 to 234. So we are in the 2nd and 3rd centuries. Who named himself Kong Ming and Wo Long, was an outstanding statesman and strategist. So he was Zhuge Liang, but he also called himself Kong Ming or Wo Long, 3 names. He was born in Yangdu, Langya, today's Yunnan, Shandong province, and later settled in Longzong, where he devoted himself to acquiring knowledge, and his reputation for wisdom spread far and wide. Zhuge Liang did not concern himself with doing textual research into every sentence or chapter like most people did at that time, but to grasp the gist of the articles. Through great efforts, he was familiar with astronomy, geography, and well-versed in the tactical arts. So we call it quick reading now, speed reading. He was a master of that. Most people, look for the details. But the other way is you can do a volume in 20 minutes. When I was doing Diploma of Education, there was a fast reading course, which I did. And the idea was to go into a library or a bookshop or whatever and just go through the books quickly and get the gist of the whole text. I think there's room for everything. There's room for that, but when you're looking for something, that's a good way. But once you find it, then you have to adopt what everyone does and look at them with the explication de texte in mind. In other words, you have to explain what you're reading. You have to explain it to yourself and to others. So, Zhuge Liang, here we go. He ambitiously hoped to reunify the nation with his own strength. Zhuge Liang also paid great attention to social observation and analysis and accumulated a wealth of experience in running the country. Meanwhile, after uniting the North, Cao prepared to march south for the dream of a completely united China. At that time, Sun Quan controlled the middle and lower reaches of the Yangtze River, and Liu Bei, the weakest of the 3 antagonists, was stationed in Jingzhou. Liu Bei went to visit the 27-year-old Zhuge Liang 3 times to ask for the latter's assistance. Zhuge Liang analysed the situation in the country in detail for Liu Bei and recommended that he ally with Sun Quan against Cao. By listening to Zhuge Liang's incisive analysis, Liu Bei became suddenly enlightened. He thought that Zhuge Liang was a talent hard to come across, and therefore he earnestly requested Zhuge Liang to go with him, helping him to complete the great cause of vitalizing the Han dynasty. Later, Liu Bei adopted Zhuge Liang's suggestion and defeated Cao in the Battle of the Red Cliff, his forces emerging as much stronger power. Not long after he proclaimed himself the emperor. Liu Bei died of illness in Baidisheng. Before he died, he handed over the state power of Shu to Zhu Liang to be wielded on behalf of Liu Bei's son, Liu Chan, the new emperor. The southwestern minorities exploited the situation to start an armed revolt. In 225, Zhu Liang led an army south and pacified the rebellious tribes there peacefully with his outstanding wit. The leader of the local tribes thus had faith in him. His strategy was to govern through the local chieftains, which greatly improved the relations between the Shu government and the minority peoples. Meanwhile, he also carried out far-reaching internal reforms employing people with ability, stressing agricultural production and the construction of irrigation works, and strengthening discipline in the army, which helped Shu quickly overcome a series of crises. Later, Zhu Liang launched 6 expeditions northward in an attempt to overthrow Wei and unify the country, but failed. On his last northern expedition, he died of overworking in the Wuzhangguan military camp in today's Qishan County, Shaanxi province. In the eyes of the Chinese people, Zhu Liang is the incarnation of wit, and his stories are widely spread. So, in other words, he was also a writer, but a great person in real life, with lots of talent, and recognised talent as such. So that's what he was like. Zhu Liang, you can read about him. That's it there for this time as well. Yes, I like the fact that, I've been able to read some of these beautiful historical anecdotes. Now, from, easy reading of history, we go to the modern articles that come out of online through, the big boys, Google and what's the other one? I always forget the other one. Chrome and also Safari. Okay, finally found it, Safari. Of course, there's a lot more, but we're talking about now something novel for me, relating to North America and South America and Central America, and how they acquired their populations way long before Christopher Columbus got there, or the Vikings for that matter. Genomic Age Estimates, so we're looking for when did this happen. Studies of Amerindian genetics have used high-resolution analytical techniques applied to DNA samples from modern Native Americans and Asian populations, regarded as their source populations, to reconstruct the development of human Y chromosome DNA haplogroups, Y DNA haplogroups, and human mitochondrial DNA haplogroups, mtDNA haplogroups, characteristics of Native American populations. Models of molecular evolution rates were used to estimate the ages at which Native American DNA lineages branched off from their parent lineages in Asia, and to deduce the ages of demographic events. One model, TemMetal 2007, based on Native American mtDNA haplotypes, proposes that migration into Benja occurred between 30,000 K and 25,000 K Cal years, in other words, before the birth of Christ, with migration into the Americas occurring around 10K to 15K, so 10,000 to 15,000. years after isolation of the small founding population. So the original founding population was small, and it occurred a long time before the rest of the population sort of arrived and built up its numbers. Another model, Kitchen 2000, proposes the migration into Beringia occurred approximately 36,000 before Christ, followed by 20,000 years of isolation in Beringia. Again, another hypothesis. A third model, Nomato et al. 2009, proposes the migration into Beringia occurred between 40,000 and 30,000 years, Cal years, with a last glacial maximum, LGM, migration to Americas, followed by isolation of the northern population, following closure of the ice-free corridor. So when the water when the ice became water, you couldn't cross anymore. Evidence of Australo-Melanesian admixture in Amazonian population was found by Skoglund and Reich in 2016. Australian, actually, the original population was from Africa, from southern Africa. And Melanesians, that's from Asia, the Philippines and Indonesia, Melanesia. A study of the diversification of mtDNA haplogroups C and D from southern Siberia and eastern Asia, respectively, suggests that the parent lineage subhaplogroup D4H or D4H3, a lineage found among Native Americans and Han Chinese, emerged around 20 Cal years, emerged 20,000 years before the birth of Christ, containing the emergence of D4H3 to post-local glacial maximum. Age estimates based on Y chromosome microsatellite diversity place origin of the American haplogroup Q1A3A, Y DNA, at around 10 to 15,000 Cal years. Greater consistency of DNA molecular evolution rate models with each other and with archaeological data may be gained by the use of dated fossil DNA to calibrate molecular evolution rates. Now you can see this language here in English it's really very technical, very technical. It's not for everybody's. I have very great difficulties, but I do manage a little bit. Apart from that there are studies here, scientific studies, in terms of finding out through hard evidence, if you like, through hard evidence what happened in Northern America, in the American continent, both North, Central and South. Now, source populations are the original populations from which the Americans' population was created. There is general agreement amongst anthropologists that the source populations for the migration into the Americas originated from an area somewhere east of the Yenisei River, Russian Far East, near Japan. The common occurrence of the empty haplogroups and A, B, C, and D among Eastern Asian and Native American populations has long been recognised, along with the presence of haplogroups as a whole. The greatest frequency of the 4 Native American associated haplogroups occurs in the Altai-Baikal region of southern Siberia. Some subclades of C and D closer to the Native Americans subclades occur amongst Mongolian, Amur, Japanese, Korean and Ainu populations. So these were the original people who provided the populations, the source population for the Americas. A 2019 study suggests that the Native Americans are the closest living relatives to 10,000-year-old fossils found near the Kolyma River in northern eastern Siberia. And I'm going to stop there. Okay, and the next one is human genomics models. We'll get to that one there next time. But you can see that, they're making a big effort in America to find out exactly where the American Indians, tribes and populations originated. The thing is, the earth belongs to everybody. Now, all these studies sometimes are made in order to prove ownership of land. Yes and no. In my opinion, it's got to be, oh well, doesn't matter. So that's that. Now we go to our, we're looking at Indigenous death and mourning before the arrival of, before the invasion, if you like. Okay, so here we go, and this is from, from here, a grave. A grave post was set up, these are called the totems, with saws, teeth, jaws on the end to represent the mouth of his spirit ancestor, together with a replica of an Indonesian boat to show the departure of his spirit. After several months, the bones were collected, painted red and placed in a bark coffin. This was left in a tree near the camp for several more months. Then the bones were transferred to another coffin, which was handed over to his female relatives. If the mother was still living, she carried it about for several months, then returned it to the men. By then it was assumed that the essence of the dead person, of his spirit ancestor, returned to the dreaming place. So by then it was assumed that the essence of the dead person had returned to the dreaming place of his spirit ancestor. The men smashed up the bones and put them in a hollow grave post. There you are. In the same area of Arnhem Land, women had lost a relative, performed special songs and dances during the mourning rituals. They made up the songs themselves, and these were very sad. The words recalled things the singer had done with the dead person. For example, if a mother would sing about her dead daughter's childhood and mourn the sad fate of her grandchildren, who would not have a mother to care for them. There were various ways in which a widow showed her grief and respect for her dead husband. As we have said, in some groups, a widow dashed her head, sometimes so violently that others had to stop her to prevent serious injury. On Cape York Peninsula, a widow went away from everyone with one or two close female relatives. It kept complete silence for weeks or months, depending on how long she wanted to do it. In southeastern Australia, white clay was a sign of mourning. In Victoria, close relatives of the dead person cut off their hair and placed a layer of clay 5 centimetres thick on top of their heads. After a month, it was taken off. From the Darling River westward to Lake Erie and eastern South Australia, the widow and her tribal sisters and some of the men added gypsum paste to their heads until a thick, rounded oval cap was formed. A net was worn over the head to prevent the clay from sticking to the scalp. When the mourning period was over, the caps were replaced on the grave. That's it. A net was worn over the head. When the mourning period was over, the caps were placed. Religious ceremonies were held to make sure that the dead man's spirit would go to its proper home. In Aboriginal belief, this meant the sacred site of the clan ancestor. This was to respect the dead and also to ensure that his spirit did not rise to haunt the living. Like most men and women, the Aboriginal people believed that the dead had to be treated in a proper manner and that special rites had to be enacted to send the spirits to its place of rest. So you had to make a fuss of of the dead person in order to allow the spirit to be welcomed, in other parts in the spiritual world. A bit what we've seen with the Queen, the send-up of the Queen has been extraordinary in the last 2 weeks. Extraordinary sight, never a mourning like that. There have been some in the past, but not like that. Anyway, let's hope that the Indigenous people can send dead the way they respect them in the past, and also that the Queen has been put to rest, and we appreciate the fact that at least in our lifetime we've seen a funeral like that. Okay, so that's it. Next time will be health and medicine. All right, so that's it for the moment. What will I do now? Now it's time for our two fellows, Benja Patterson and Henry Lawson. Okay, Benja Patterson, what a great guy. With the Cattle this time, one of his poems. It's a fairly long one this time. With the Cattle. The drought is down on field and flock. The river bed is dry, and we must shift the starving stock before the cattle die. We muster up with weary hearts at breaking of the day, and turn our heads to foreign parts to take the stock away. And it's hunt them up and dog them, and it's get the whip and flog them. For its weary work is roving when they are dying every day. By stock roots bare and eaten, on dusty roads and beaten, with half a chance to save their lives, we take the stock away. We cannot use the whip for shame on beasts that crawl along. We have to drop the weak and lame and try to save the strong. The wrath of God is on the track. The drought fiend holds his sway. With blows and cries and stock whip crack, we take the stock away. As they fall, we leave them lying, with the crows to watch them dying. Grim sextons of the overland that fasten on their prey. By the fiery dust storm drifting, and the mocking mirage shifting, in heat and drought and hopeless pain, we take the stock away. In dull despair the days go by with never hope of change, but every stage we draw more nigh towards the mountain range. And some may live to climb the pass and reach the great plateau, and revel in the mountain grass by streamlets fed with snow. So changing from the dry area to the ones where there is water and grass. As the mountain wind is blowing, it starts the cattle lowing and calling to each other down the dusty long array. And there speaks a grizzled drover. Well, thank God, the worst is over. The creatures smell the mountain's grass that 20 miles away. So the creatures that can smell the grass from 20 miles away. Can you imagine? That's the cattle. They press towards the mountain grass. They look with eager eyes along the rugged stony pass that slopes towards the skies. Their feet may bleed from rocks and stones, but though the blood drop starts, they struggle on with stifled groans, for hope is in their hearts. And the cattle that are bleeding, though their feet are worn and bleeding, are breaking to a kind of run, pull up and let them go. For the mountain wind is blowing and the mountain grass is growing. They settle down by running streams ice cold with melted snow. Beautiful, huh? The days are done of heat and drought upon the stricken plain. The wind has shifted right about and brought the welcome rain. The river runs with sullen roar, all flecked with yellow foam. And we must take the road once more to bring the cattle home. And its lads will raise a chorus there's a pleasant trip before us. And if the horses bound beneath us as we start them down the track, and the drover canter, singing, through the sweet green grasses springing, towards the far-off mountain land to bring the cattle back. Are these the beasts we brought away that move so lively now? They scatter like flying spray across the mountain's brow, and dashing down the rugged range, we hear the stockwhip crack. Good fate, it is a welcome change to bring such cattle back. And it's steady down the lead there, and it's let them stop and feed there. For they are wild as mountain eagles, and their sides are all of home. But they are settling down already, and they'll travel nice and steady, with cheery call and jest and song, we fetch the cattle home. We have to watch them close at night, for fear they'll make a rush and break away in headlong flight across the open bush. And by the campfire's cheery blaze, with mellow voice and strong, we hear the lonely watchman raise the overlander's song. Or it's when we are done with roving, while the camping and the droving, it's homeward down bland will go, and never more will roam, while the stars shine out above us like the eyes of those who love us, the eyes of those who watch and wait to greet the cattle home. The plains are all awake with grass, the skies are deepest blue, and leisurely the cattle pass and feed the long day through. But when we sight the station gate, we make the stockwhips crack. A welcome sound to those who wait to greet the cattle back. And through the twilight falling, we hear their voices calling, as the cattle splash across the ford and churn it into foam. And the children run to meet, and our wives and sweethearts greet us, the heroes from the overland who brought the cattle home. Beautiful. So it starts on a bad note, with a drought, and it finishes on a lovely note. That's Benja Patterson for you. That's why they love him so much, even today. Very good. Benja Patterson, with the cattle. Now, we got to Henry Lawson. Maybe should have done it the other way around, because Henry Lawson is the one who talks about solitude. But he's got a funny way of expressing himself as well. Okay, well, where are we? So, we are page 28 from, he took a shortcut. Okay, well, I have to find it. He took a shortcut, this time over the ridge and down a gully, which was full of ring-barked trees and long white grass. He had nearly reached its mouth when a great greasy black Guyana clambered up a sapling from under his feet and looked fightable. "Dang the jump-up thing," cried the old man. It gin me a start." At the foot of the sapling he espied an object which he at first thought was the blackened carcass of a sheep, but on closer examination discovered to be the body of a man. It lay with his forehead resting on its hands, dried to a mummy by the intense heat of the western summer. Me luck's in for the day, and no mistake," said the shepherd, scratching the back of his head, while he took stock of the remains. He picked up a stick and tapped the body on the shoulder. The flash sounded like leather. He turned it over on its side. It fell flat on its back like a board, and the shriveled eyes seemed to peer up at him from under the blackened wrists. Now this is the Bush Undertaker. Okay, so he found the dead body. He stepped back involuntarily, but recovering himself, leaned on his stick and took in all the ghastly details. There was nothing in the blackened features to tell aught of name or race, but the dress proclaimed the remains to be those of a European. The old man caught sight of the black bottle in the grass close beside the corpse. This set him thinking. Presently he kneeled down, examined the soles of the dead men's blucher boots, and then rising with an air of conviction exclaimed, "Brummy, by gosh, busted up at last." "I told you, son, Brummy," he said impressively, addressing the corpse. "I allows told you as how's it you'd be. Am I here you are, you thundering jumped up, cross or God fool." Gosh, it's very hard. "I allow told you as how it you'd be, and here is you are, you thundering jump up, castle gone fool. You can't earn more any men in the colony, but you're dead lush it all away. I allow said as how you'd end, and now your kin see for yourself." I told you how you would end, but now your relatives will see how you actually ended. "I expect it was a coming, it me get fixed up and set straight again. Then you're going to swear off, same as you allow did, and here you are, and now I expect I'll have fix you up for the last time and make you decent for to undo it, leave you lying out there like a dead sheep. So it's not right for me not to give you the money, because otherwise you don't get paid and you can't do anything. So you depend on this work." He picked up the corked bottle and examined it. To his great surprise, it was nearly full of rum. So he found, yes, that's it. "And, well, this gets me," exclaimed the old man. "Me luck's in this Christmas, ain't no mistake. He must have got the jams early in his spree, or he wouldn't have been making for me with near a bottle full left. How some never. Here goes." And that was Benja Patterson. And that's, the Bush Undertaker. So he picks up a bottle of gin and hopefully, he makes the most of it. Well, there are still another 2.5 pages for this short story. So let's hope that we can do it next week, but it'll take a couple of weeks. Okay, so that's that. And we are 12. So now I can go to my usual, the part that I love the most as well, because this is my trip to Darwin, and then to Catherine, and then to Broome, and then, of course, to Perth. Here we go. Let's see if, I can get my computer going. Yes, let's see. Oh, yes, the usual thing. Okay. Here we are, the termite mounds. So we this is still Kakadu, the Kakadu Litchfield Park, and we get to what they call the termite mounds, and there are lots of them, incredible amount. Okay, so let's go. Here we go. Hold on. Here we go. Thanks, Angela, for watching. Okay, the termite mounds. So here we go. termites. These are what they look like. Termites, those little ants, look what they create. And there are thousands of them across all the land in the north. Litchfield National Park. They are welcome, see? Termite mounds. Oh, of course, I've done quite a few. How many? I was taking the whole lot. Oh, well. We can read this one day. The mounds, conservation area, this is it here. These are the mounds here. See that? That's what they look like from afar. These are protected mounds. They're protected. Look at these ones here, how many there are. Termite mounds. And look at, very dry. And this one, a big one. There's another one here. But that's a really big one. Unbelievable, huh? And these are the people now. Let's see what I say. This is an explanation from the bus driver. See, you can't just walk in there. So these are all termite mounds. Some of them are small. Some are very big. They're the small ones. Look at this. Look at this. Then I walk away and go further up to have a look. And you can see that you can't just walk in there. You have to stay away because you can get bitten. All right. So here, this was the structure that protected the mounds, but allowed tourists to have a look.
On top of the mount, is there like a hole? Is there always a hole so that they can build more?
See, there's more.
No, they just they can open up. If you went out there and you broke off a piece, what would happen is straight away soldiers would come out, protect the perimeter, then the works will come out and they'll start repairing the mound itself.
Will they eat you up?
You could, look, I won't tell you, I'm not going to say anything about it.
They're smarter than us, you can't build a house without you. They're just here ready to open up. No gory, thanks.
So, but they would eat you up, of course. They love human flesh. Yeah. This is the termite world. An incredible place, really. See all this. It's a protected area, which is wonderful to see. And so far away from where I live, Australia. What a great country. That's one of the mounds close by. The close-up of a termite mound, a mound underneath. And these are the other ones. Yeah. Amazing. Look at that. And we've done our 10 minutes. That's it. We're only there for 10 minutes. Termite mounds. A bit more. It shouldn't be there, but anyway. This another termite. That was on the other side of the road. Another protected one. Cathedral termite mound. There you are. Look how big they can be. They're small, but also big. That's there. And of course, now we are back in Darwin, close. I thought this was the last night in Darwin. There you are. We got to where we are. Getting off, you gotta wait. And there you are. Grand luxury tour. Look at Darwin from my apartment. Look at all those boats. Plenty more boats everywhere. And they've got such a beautiful place around the water. Beautiful golf. Now that's eating. Time. Also, then a walk at night. And of course, the selfies. Have to do selfies. Oh. Look at that. Graffiti, huh? Graffiti art. Good one. Fishing outdoor world. There you are. Early morning. There we are. We're off again. And this time we're going away. Darwin. We're leaving Darwin. Goodbye. And this was the actual excursion where we were going. I didn't have my copy, so I just filmed one. And this is what have I done here? Let's have a look. There you are.
Travelling on a straight road now. Over an hour.
A straight road.
Unbelievable.
Iceland capital, second base, Iceland.
This is the Adelaide River here. Adelaide River country. The birthplace of 44 Wing formed 60th anniversary of the Wing, group captain, etc. Adelaide War Cemetery, which we Japanese. Oh no, yeah, War Cemetery. Look at that. All 20-year-olds. A lot of young people resting in this place. People served, and you have to leave your signature. Adelaide River War Cemetery burial list. How many young people died in wars? There, you can read it. In 1942. That was a very quick stopover, just to add to our, and that's our bus driver. That's what he has to say.
Very impressed with your
You're famous.
Apart from being famous, your knowledge of the place is incredible.
Oh, yeah,
Thank you for...
you'll be sick of my voice after 6 days, I'll tell you.
That's all right. I don't get sick of it. I've asked a few other people, and they all said that, you know, there's plenty of information where it comes from. Well done.
Well, we'll save some for later too.
Thank you very much.
No problem.
What's your name?
Paul.
Paul. Thanks, Paul.
No worries, mate.
That was a bus driver. It's this one here. Commonwealth. Oh, yeah. Robin Falls it's called, yeah. Look at the land. Kilometres or kilometres and kilometres of all this. Gives you an idea of the land. I like to show this because when you travel around Australia, that's what you see. Northern Territory, the type of countries. More. That's how I entertain myself. There you are. I'll take some pictures as well. This is called Douglas Daly in Catherine. So approaching Catherine. This is interesting. Look at the rocks. A different countryside. Still the same, very dry. And that's a close up. A lot of rocks. Where did they come from? Look how dry the land is. Beautiful trees, look at that. And then there's beautiful roads. Amazing. Pine Creek Camp. Diggers Rest Motel, yeah? Catherine. Pine Creek. So we stopped here. National Trust. I think we've got some animals here. I know. Look at that. Oh, we stopped for a watering hole. Oh, a bit of lunch. That's it. The middle of nowhere. Look how beautiful it is. What a beautiful place. Yeah. Beautiful. How that, huh? That's beautiful. That's down, and we are towards Catherine, it's down here. So we travelled all that way, from down to Catherine. Lazy Lizard, Tavern in Carron Park. That's still in Pine Creek here. Pine Creek. So where are we? We'll get there to Catherine soon. Lazy Lizard. There. Some signs. Very dry. Look at the land. Look at this.
But they don't think twice about getting in a car, which is the most dangerous place you can be. Anywhere in the world, probably.
Look at the rocks.
You know, they don't think twice about it. I mean, you've got more chance of
Amazing.
being killed by an animal in Australia. But so it's weird. I'd like being a guide for so long, I've probably seen maybe 20 venomous snakes in the wild.
There you are. Catherine Shaw. So we are in Catherine. Oh, that's a good one. Oop. This is Catherine South, yeah. This is probably a good time to finish because with this river here. Yes, I'm going to stop there. See what notice there? When the water, wet weather, the water rises. Okay, so that was enough for today. I've enjoyed it today. Not many people have come on, but it's it's lesson podcast number 49, and this is World History with Tom Padula. It's live on Facebook, and another lesson presentation been done. I've enjoyed it again, and I hope you do too when you come on and watch it. Okay, so on this note, ciao until next week from Tom Padula of TomPadulaTV on YouTube, and let me turn it around. Okay, again from Tom Padula TV on YouTube and Insegna Booksellers. See you next time. Bye-bye.